Gracias por acompañarnos.
If I tell something to a seller, oh, he is not very serious, this is a second-hand car salesman who tries to sell me something that is horrible, and they are floppy. Many salesmen are floppy. It's like we, the programmers, we are artists that use computer programs. How can I become a salesperson? The bad news is that there's no company that can exist without selling. If nobody buys, we will get no income. Well, I want to be like Max Zuckerman, and I do something, and then people start buying. But only the minority get to that point. So my theory is that we dislike the concept of selling. We don't go out to sell. And one of the reasons why they don't do well is because they don't like selling. They look down on selling. Oh, you're a salesman, simply a salesman. I work in the technical area of GeneXus. When I moved into the commercial area, they told me, oh, you went to the dark side of the company. That's a joke, but it has some truth in it. Well, they never invited me to their barbecues again because I belong to the dark side of the company.
This concept of looking at selling activities as something negative, well, this concept has to be changed. And I changed the approach, therefore. In 2004, as a technician, I had to go work in this place, which is an oil platform in the Gulf of Mexico. It's owned by Pemex, and the owners of the platform are clients of GeneXus. This platform is semi-submerged, and it is in charge of the maintenance of the oil platform. In 2004, we created a mobile system to be in charge of maintaining the platform, which is critical. And we were on a ship, and we had nothing to do, so we were working and sleeping and not much else. We had to be on the ship for 14 days, up to 28 days, and this was the group that was on the ship. I'm there. I don't know whether you can see me. And Juan Echeverria, who is now in K2B, was there too. And Jorge Zepeda, a Mexican guy, is there in the middle. We spent a lot of time together, as I said, and then we had to produce the system. It was a pioneer in mobile systems. It's used a language that is no longer used. It was a bit chaotic, but then the project was launched, and then years went by. I lost touch with Jorge, and I went to another division, and I had to go to Mexico. And Rebecca in Mexico tells me, we have a client that is going to change the technology of the company, and they no longer will they are no longer going to use GeneXus. And when this happens, there's not much we can do. And listen to the reasons and learn from them is mostly everything. So we went to this meeting and met one of the programmers, and one of them turned out to be Jorge. 10 years later, Jorge had moved to Mexico City by then, was working in Mexico City. Well, I saw him again, but I didn't say a word during the meeting, and Jorge was the one who was defending GeneXus. And one of the things he said was that he trusted the product. And then and there I realized that it was not GeneXus as a wonderful product what was being defended. It was the relationship of trust that Jorge had with me, because we had gone through difficult times and we had made it. And this is the change of focus, a focus based on trust. As people, as organizations, we have to create trust. But we are talking about selling. It's very nice to create trust, but we also have to sell. And this is a change in focus. And if you take away this idea, I will be happy. You have to think that sales themselves are not the goal. They are a consequence of having created a relationship of trust with our clients. And besides, we have to have a product that is adapted to the customer's needs. And this changes everything radically, because it's not a question of going out to sell and manipulating someone so that they buy my product and not the product of the competitor. It's a question of creating a relationship of trust. If the customer has a need that I can fulfill, they will buy from us. And that is what we think. We are people who create trust. And one of the things that lead to trust is when you go through hard times. Today I was talking to Gustavo from Mercado Libre. In university, we studied together, and for 1 week we did not sleep. We were programming the work we had to hand in, and a strong link was created. And all of you, you are here because at a certain point you had a difficult time. When the first version was released in 1990 and a performance bug was found, Breugan, the heads of the company, decided to meet with all the company, and they said, well, we found a bag. And this was the beginning of the events. And when I asked Nicolas what happened next, he said, well, we were about 30, but we became friends. And 27 years later, some of these people are here present. So when we acknowledge at hard times that there has been a mistake, this leads to trust. Of course, there are people who really can, well, who are very good creating trust relationships, not only in hard times. But when I moved to the commercial division, I met people who are very good at this, and I tried to find out what their qualities are, which are the features these people have. Some of them are salespersons, others are not, but they are the salesperson who sell without selling, who are very good at creating trust. And their main feature is that they are very good in conversation. They love to talk, which doesn't mean that they are chat boxes. And this is something that divide technicians from these people who create relationship of trust. These people don't send an email. They talk. We love to send emails. If we have a problem, we send an email, and the problem is out of my field. It's in cyberspace and it's in your inbox. And it takes sometimes 4 days to solve the problem, whereas if you pick up the phone, you can solve it instantly. These people who are very good at creating relationships pick up the phone or have a coffee with you. And this is why we meet with you at at GeneXus events. We don't base these events in streaming or internet meetings. We meet with you. We go to different countries to talk with our clients, because we know that the only way of creating a relationship of trust is by talking. And these people are very good at it, and we have to learn from them. These last years, I've talked to a lot of people, and I have learned from them. And I have learned what you should do and what we should not do. And I would love to leave with you some keys, 7 keys I've learned from people who are very good at creating trust. And basically, I would like you to remember what I said, that the sale starts with a relationship of trust. The first key is that these people are consistent. There's consistency between what they do and what they say. This means if they say the meeting is at 3, they will be there at 3. If they say tomorrow I'll send you the email, they do. If they say the product can do such and such a thing, that is true. And I don't need to go to the developers to fix things. And if they say I will send the proposal day after tomorrow, you will receive it. So the relationship of trust means I will tell you the truth. When I went into the commercial division, the office was in Zona America at the time, and when I was told you are going to go to a different division, I received a call from Breogán, and he said, I need to talk to you, please come urgently. So I didn't know what was going on. I went to talk to Breogán, and he said, well, Rodrigo, I was in technical pre-sales. You have been doing this work for a long time, and I'm going to give you some advice. Always tell the truth, because if we sell something we don't have, then we lose confidence. Nicolas told me that one of the salesmen at the beginning of GeneXus went to see a client and they offered this and that. And after explaining everything, the salesperson said, well, no, GeneXus is not for you. And Nicolas was very surprised. But the client in the future will remember us because we said that we told the truth at the beginning. The other key in order to create good relationships is to listen. These people are very good at listening, and I know that this contradicts the idea of the typical salesperson who goes blah 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 and are the kings of the office when they get there in the morning. But good salespeople have to know what the needs of the clients are in order to fulfill them, and this can only be achieved by listening. And listening is an art that is being lost because of cell phones, etc. We have more and more difficulty in paying attention to a conversation with sincerity. Active listening, say the books. You have to look at people in the eyes, ask questions, nod. If someone says, it's very hot here, then you say, yes, it is hot. But you cannot pretend that. Either you listen to someone or you don't. A friend of mine who is a psychologist says, what you don't say, you transmit by acting. And Sylvia told me an anecdote a few days ago. She was working in technical pre-sales in communications technology, and they went to see a client with a brochure. And it was a prospective client who started talking about lots of terrible things that had just happened to him. And the person who was visiting the client was nodding. And after he stopped talking, he said, well, congratulations, but I come to offer you this product. So he obviously wasn't listening. Another key, people who create trust usually don't complain. Complaining is something that is in our DNA in this part of the world. You get into a taxi and ask the driver, how are you doing? And the driver will start complaining right away. I started analyzing the question of complaining, and there is a way of complaining that breaks the ice. For example, if you are going through bad times, maybe I will say, oh, it's so hot here, and then this breaks the ice. But then there's the people who are complaining all the time, and this creates rejection. People complain for two reasons. Firstly, because what they mean is, I would do this much better than you. Or secondly, because they don't want to take responsibility for what is going on. For example, oh, the city is so dirty, but these people also throw papers on the street. And this does not lead to trust. I met someone who has taught me a lot about creating trust. Someone who owns a company in the same place where we have our headquarters. He was entering the premises and the barrier was closed on top of his roof. And I parked the car and said, they damaged your car. And he told me, be very careful not to have this thing happen to you. Instead of complaining, he was telling me, however, be careful. And this obviously taught me a lot. And then we are very quick at judging people. And this is something that people who create trust don't do. I see Matthias asleep, for example, and I don't think he's asleep because he went out last night and drank or because my speech is boring. Poor Matthias. I'm not judging him, this is just an example. And in a well known book of Kobe, there is a story. There is a father in the underground who has two boys who are breaking everything, the signs, the chairs, etc. And at a certain point, people are looking at the father and saying, what a terrible father, boys are breaking everything. And they start judging this man. And at some point, a lady says, don't you see what your boys are doing? And he says, yes, but you know what? We come from the hospital and their mother has just died. And this is an example that opened my mind so much, how we judge people without understanding the context and without realizing that we are just looking at a photo of reality, but we don't know what's going on behind that. And when we judge someone, there's no way back. It's very difficult to regain trust. A few years ago, I was doing a negotiation course with the people from CMI, and they decided to set up negotiation teams, and I was a leader of my team. And on the other side, there was someone who is well known in Uruguay and is on TV a lot. You see that chefs in Uruguay at the moment are like rock stars. And we were negotiating, so how much I'm going to put into the business, and it was a win-win situation. We shook hands, and when we turned our backs, they stabbed us at the back. And when the professor asked them, "Why did you do this? You were going to win in the long run." She answered, "Well, I looked at the other team and I thought they don't look trustworthy. And for me, it was like a dagger. And every time I see this guy on TV, I switch channels. Maybe he's an excellent person, but it would be very difficult for me to create a relationship of trust with someone who judged me like someone who was not trustworthy. And of course, I would not go to the restaurant this person owns. Then another key, the only discussion you can win is the one you don't fight. Arguing is pointless. If I want to impose my opinion over other people's opinion, it's completely pointless. Otherwise, ask Rajoy. And something you can try, a very practical tip. When there are two lions fighting, if one of them realizes he's going to lose, he turns his neck to the opponent. If he stays still, the other lion just bites his neck lightly and then leaves. And this is the technique of the person who has been beaten, and show it in traffic. If you make a mistake while driving and you shout at the other person, instead of doing that, you raise your hand and apologize. Even if it's not your fault, you will see that the other person has no idea of how to react. He is caught off guard because he was ready to fight and insult you. And people who are good at creating trust don't fight. The salesperson who says, I know what you mean, but this is not so, I'm going to explain you how it works. Well, this doesn't work. You have to give way to other people's opinion without fighting. And for us, it's very difficult sometimes to forget the little child inside us.
This is a doubt I have. I was taking my son to school, he's 4, and the teacher is Venezuelan. And he said, why there's a war in Venezuela? My son asked me, and I thought, how can I explain this to him? Well, look, Maxi, imagine that in your class they want to paint one wall in green and the other friends want to paint it yellow and you don't come to an agreement. So you start insulting one another and then you start hitting each other. Well, this is more or less what is happening in Venezuela. I'm simplifying the situation, but he got it. He looked at me and he said, why don't you paint one yellow and the other green? And that's the end of the fight. The other point, try everybody alike. Regardless of their position in the company, regardless of politics, if you are good in generating trust, you would treat everybody alike. Someone I mentioned before does something brilliant. I traveled with this person. We sat at a restaurant abroad. And the first thing when the waiter came, he said, excuse me, what's your name, please? And he said, Peter. And it's good for human beings to listen to our own name. Please tell me, Peter, or John, what would you recommend out of this menu? Because that adds value. Why? Because they treat everybody alike. I've seen him dealing with bank owners and managers, and he remembers details, he remembers names. And this brings me to the last point. They always show real interest for other people, and they are good in generating trust. They show real interest. They care for others. And you cannot pretend that. You need to open up to possibilities. Maybe at this point, that person does not apply to my objective, but I may find this person again. I was told the story of someone riding on a plane, and his neighbor was drilling, exercising a presentation. He was talking to himself with a PPT, and it was a presentation on soils, I think, or something. And he was rehearsing. And then he said, look, we have 3 hours flight. Why don't you make the presentation to me and I react to the presentation? So they did that. And then several years later, They met again and they did business together. Why? Because one of them had shown real interest. And not just egoistical interest, but something to support the other person. So it all boils down to the following. These 7 things can be summarized in one single word, a word that is helpful, and that is empathy. Empathy is the capacity to stand in somebody else's shoes, to really understand the other person. I'm convinced that if we are able to develop empathy, we'll produce better products, we'll sell more. Our relation with our own company and its different areas will be better. We will get on better with our customers, with our families, with the world, and in the end, we will be shaping a better future. So that's my message. Try to develop empathy. It will bring you benefits in the short, medium, and long run. Thank you.